Welcome to AWS On Air live at the New York Summit. My name is Aaron Hunter. I am a developer advocate on the AWS Training and Certification team, joined with a few of my friends, May, Mai, and Harrison, here to talk all about the AWS Power Hour DevOps Engineer Professional Training live on twitch.tv/AWS. Harrison, if you don't mind, can you tell our friends who you are, and then May and Mai?
Absolutely. My name is Harrison Sherwin. I am one of our senior technical trainers for AWS. So day in, day out, I'm teaching people all about how to use our products. As part of this series, we're teaching you a little bit about DevOps. And for the series, I am joined by May and Mai as well. May, Mai, could you introduce yourselves, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is May. I'm a solutions architect from AWS. So I just renewed my DevOps professional certifications, and now here I am on the show, and we're going to walk through all the domains that's going to cover on the exams. Mai, what about yourself?
Hey everyone, my name's Mai Nishitani. I'm a solutions architect and I look after customers, and I used to be in the DevOps space prior to joining AWS. And yes, I do have the DevOps professional certification as well. So we're here to teach you and learn and have fun along the way.
Awesome.
And hey, have fun. I imagine you're probably going to assign some homework, or is it home fun during the series here?
I like a little bit of work with my fun, you know, mix it up a little bit, makes the fun more valuable.
Okay, let's go ahead and show our friends here what they're going to be looking at and what they're going to be getting into, because you just kicked off the series this past Monday. So I'll bring that up here on the screen, and let me go ahead and put Harrison at the top because he's our main host. So where our friends can go, they can go ahead and go to, what is it, awspowerhour.com, and this will take them to the main training certification on Twitch landing page, where they can find more details about not just this series, but all of the series that we've had in the past. But here you are right in the very, very front and very beginning. And I'll pretend like I clicked on that and take you over to the series. But Harrison, on this one right here, we have the AWS Power Hour DevOps Engineer. This is a professional level. You just kicked it off on Monday, July 24th at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Can you tell us what you did in this first episode?
Yeah, we had a great turnout for our first episode, and we started really with what our series is about. And that recording will be available, but what we're really looking at is what is in this exam and what are some ways that we can help prepare for the exam. So we've got a 6-episode series geared up for this. And in each of those episodes, we're walking through one of the domains from the certification exam guide. Episode 1 is all about SDLC automation. That stands for Software Development Lifecycle. We're also doing a little bit of double duty with this episode as well. We're starting with what's DevOps? Why do I care about this idea of combining development and operations processes together? What are some of the benefits? What are some of the disadvantages as well as we go through this process? Then we're going to look through, how do I construct what we call a pipeline for CI and CD, or continuous integration and continuous deployment, or continuous delivery, depending on how you go through. Watch the episode to know a little bit more about the delineation between them. So within those pipelines, we're looking at multiple stages that are available. Where does our code start? Where does our configuration start? How do we then build out our artifacts? Things like container images, things like packages for ourselves. What are we doing from a testing perspective? What options are available? How are we then combining in some of our infrastructure deployment options? But more on that is going to be available live in episode 2. And then we're also then looking, okay, how do I get my updated code on my EC2 instances or on my Lambda functions? So episode 1 was really a lot of overview. Here's what we're going to be looking at a lot. And then in many of the other episodes, we're going to go in a lot greater detail into each of those pieces that we're really starting with a high level at in episode 1. And we encourage you to watch that recording. Had a great turnout. And then what we want to do is we want to kind of walk you through a few of the other episodes that we've got coming available. So Mai, could you go ahead and talk about episode 2 for us, please? That's coming live 4:30 p.m. U.S. Pacific time on July 31st.
Thanks, Harrison. So with episode 2, we're building on top of episode 1 and literally building. So infrastructure as code. What is infrastructure as code? We'll get into those details and how you define infrastructure as code and how do you configure that, right? So you'll be using a lot of serverless components as well as containers. And as a day-to-day operation of what DevOps engineers do, they automate quite a lot. So how do you incorporate automation by leveraging infrastructure as code? So as you're building out this pattern, there are reusable components within AWS, right? And so how do you provision and manage systems throughout their life cycle? So, and how do you onboard and also securing AWS accounts in a multi-account and multi-region environment? So it is trending that, it is best practices that we need to have AWS accounts in a multi-account, maybe multi-region if you need it as well. In terms of security, I know that will be covered in a later episode, but there'll be more information around the complexity and large-scale environments as well. So this is good for not only large-scale enterprises, but for those that are starting out and thinking about different patterns of deploying and automating your infrastructure. Now, off to episode 3. May, what do you got in store?
Yeah, so episode 3 is going to be a resilience topic. So if you haven't seen episode 1 that we already launched, make sure you go and watch on it because it's built on top of it. So episode 1 and 2, it's built on top of it. And then on the episode 3, we're going to talk about resilience. So we're going to talk about highly available solutions that is available, how to build and design the architecture in their highly available design solutions that meet the resilience requirements from the business, multi-AZ and multi-region development. So we're going to dive deep a little bit into what's the multi-AZ, what's the multi-region, what solution or what services you should choose to build out these solutions. And then we're going to talk about how to do the failover mechanism. What is the failover mechanism that meets the business requirement? Is that automated? Is it manual? What's the RTO and RPO? I'm not going to reveal too much. Make sure you tune in for the, episode 3. So we're going to touch on those, the resilience topic. And then we also going to talk about the scalable solution. So scalable in terms of scaling the compute layer, scaling your database. What is the best practices to scale your database? What is the best practices to build distributed application, loosely coupled applications? So we touch on those domains around, architecture best practices to improve your architecture from the resilient perspective. And then we touched a little bit on the disaster recovery. Disaster recovery has been a really hot topic. It has been around, but disaster recovery in the cloud is slightly different. So we're going to talk about automated disaster recovery. What are the tools and mechanisms that you can use to failover, to do the DR recovery? If it is the failover DR in the multi-AZ or DR in the region perspective, we're going to touch on those topics. So make sure you tune in on the episode 3. And then we have got episode 4. So I'm going to throw it back to Harrison. What's on the episode 4?
Yeah, coming off episode 3 on August 7th, we're going into monitoring and logging on August 14th. Because we've talked a lot just now about automation. And it's one of the things that I call, that makes me be very lazy. I mean, efficient. I really love that idea that I can just push my code, let it do everything, and I don't have to think about it anymore. But part of that automation is making sure we have the tools in place to track if something has gone wrong or if everything is going right. That's where we're looking at monitoring. That's where we're looking at logging. That's where we're looking at tracing. What numbers about my environment tell me what's going on? What logs in place are going to tell me why something failed or even why something succeeded? And how is data moving between all of my pieces? That becomes really important when we're talking about DevOps, because many times these DevOps processes, tools, and procedures make some assumptions that we're using these microservice architectures. Great. I love microservices. I love the idea of that distributed idea. I like different teams doing different things and being tailored to those specific projects, putting the right tools in place with the right people. Problem: complexity. There's a lot more moving pieces now, and a lot more room for those interactions between each of our different microservices to break. And as we established, I'm efficient. I don't want to have to monitor that all day long. No one likes being on call at 3 a.m. and getting the call that they need to fix something. So we're going to talk about where do we get that data to solve those problems. And then going right into episode 5, August 21st, we're going to figure out how to solve those problems. Mike, could you help me out with that?
I think that's May.
My apologies. May, help me out with that, please.
Cool. So on the episode 5, so we have incidents and event response. So we're going to talk about how do you manage the incidents. We're going to talk about how do you manage those resources to be able to process, to notify, and to take action in real time. So to take actions really why it is happening. How do you respond to these events? How do you notify the right people? So it's really important we talk about some of the areas that that's really capture the events that really notify, for example, AWS Health Dashboard, Event Bridge to notify people, CloudTree and CloudWatch. You're not stranger to those services. It has been around. It's been super useful. Be able to detect the event and be able to respond to those. So we're going to talk about those, but we can't forget about event-driven architectures. Now we're talking about all these events and how can we automate? How can we really to able to respond in real time? So that's what we're going to discover on the episode 5. And we're going to touch a little bit upon configurations, those things change in the events. How do we able to capture somebody change, for example, somebody changed your configuration, and how do we know who changed and what changed, what happens? That's where we're going to talk about AWS config and system managers. How do you manage those services that complex, loosely coupled microservices? How do you manage those and making sure you know what thing has changed and how it has been changed, and what can you do if something goes wrong and you want to roll back? Do you have the mechanism to do that? That's what we're going to cover on the episode 5. And then we will also cover on how do you troubleshoot them. So one thing goes wrong, you have to come up with a mechanism to be able to make sure the service is back to normal. But we also need to analyze the root cause. We need to troubleshoot. When failures happen, we need to know what's the root cause of the failure so we can learn from it and prevent it from the next time happening. So we're going to cover some of the areas around, metrics and logging services, analyzing some of the failure components and how you can be able to detect those. That also go back to the previous episode. That's why we keep saying, make sure you tune in on the previous episode, because that's going to go back to the previous episode that Harrison and Mai has covered on the CI/CD pipelines, monitoring and logging. So it's all coming together on the episode 5.
And then looking at episode 6 with security, one of our top priorities here at AWS. Let's wrap up with that episode, please.
Yeah, security. Episode 6. So security and compliance, it's everybody's job, right? At AWS, security is job 0 for us, and it should be for everyone involved. Now, in the final episode, you'll get to look at security and compliance. Now, how do you implement security for what you need to look after? Now, I'm sure we'll be touching upon the shared responsibility model, security of the cloud, security in the cloud, and what your responsibilities are as a DevOps professional looking after the security portion of that. Identity and access management, that is a huge part of security, right? Especially in AWS. How do you also, as a DevOps professional, apply automation for security control? So ever heard the term DevSecOps? I know there's a lot of terms out there, right? So how do you start implementing that? And that's the ideal future state, to automate not only everything, but everything that actually makes sense. How do you implement security monitoring? So there was logging and monitoring covered in the previous episode that Harrison talked about. How do you make sure that that's covered, right? And how do you make sure that you're auditing your solution? So who's accessing what service, and should they be accessing those services? And if they're not, how do you prevent that? And compliance is also a huge part of the governance cycle as well, especially if you're part of a regulated industry like, say, financial services. There's a lot of industries out there that are regulated and need to comply to some of the frameworks out there, right? So, how do you ensure that you're complying with some of the regulatory frameworks out there? And we have a whole plethora of information around that. All right, that covers episode 6. Back over to
Yeah,
you, Harrison,
That's
for a sum up.
thank you very
that's
much.
everything for. Sorry, Harrison, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, if I like my banks to be anything, I like them to be very secure. Within all of our episodes,
Nice.
we're not just talking about, the topics. We're also giving you tools to help you learn how to prepare for these. We're giving you practice questions. We're preparing you as best as we can to be successful in this exam, whether you're just starting your journey with it, whether you're in the process of doing your journey with it, or whether you're trying to renew it because that 3-year timer is expiring. So please drop in on Mondays at 4:30 US Pacific time and catch us live.
Yeah, so they can go to awspowerhour.com. That'll take them over here. Just to kind of recap everyone, that'll take them to the AWS Training and Certification on Twitch landing page. They can scroll down, find your AWS Power Hour DevOps Engineer, the professional level exam prep session on Twitch, and they can get all the details about each episode. And then once the episodes have aired, this add to calendar here, which is going to be the next episode on Monday, July 31st, will turn into watch on demand so they can watch the recorded episode. A lot of details, a lot of things that you're covering here. Thank you both for, actually all three of you, sorry. Thank you all three of you for being here to tell us about your past episode for episode 1 and the rest of your series, to all of our friends here live at the New York Summit from AWS On Air. So hey, everyone, stay tuned for more from AWS On Air live at the New York Summit. Bye.